Hello everyone, and welcome back to Stewie's Social Studies, where today we will be comparing revolutions from history and how they connect and differ. To start things off, let's talk about the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment was a movement based on culture and intellect where people started to really emphasize reason. Some characteristics of the Enlightenment were, as I said, reason, nature, happiness, progress, and liberty. Some Enlightenment ideas, for example, were freedoms to all men, equality amongst all men, religious tolerance, power to the people, and limited power to the government, along with scientific progress over superstition. Now, let's take a look at the American Revolution that took place from 1775 to 1783. To understand any revolution, we need to start to know what caused them. And for that, we'll use my favorite acronym, SPICY. SPICY stands for Social, Political, Innovation, Culture, Economic, and Environmental. Some social reasons for the American Revolution were the colonists were not allowed representation in presenting important issues in British decision-making, although we will come back to this shortly. It basically meant that the issues of the colonists were not to any relevance or priority to the king. Some political reasons for the American Revolution was the desire for a representative democracy. It was believed that the government had way too much power at the time, and that the American citizens deserved to have power to decide on the decisions made that affect their own lives. At this time, the British government was an absolute monarchy, meaning that everything was controlled by the king and the colonists had no say. An innovation that aided in the American Revolution was the smoothbore flintlock musket. It was made in France in 1610 and was the main firearm used in the American Revolution. These muskets were around 5 feet long and weighed around 10 pounds. Although not the most accurate, this gunpowder innovation still got the job done. A cultural reason for the revolution is the desire for church and government to be separated to allow religious freedoms for all the colonists. As brought up earlier, the colonists were faced with taxation without representation. After the French and Indian War, the 13 colonies were forced to pay heavy reparation taxes for a war they didn't even make the decision to start. Along with that, there were many acts passed causing high taxes on many goods that, due to mercantilism, could only be purchased from the British government. Due to the Atlantic Ocean between the colonies and their mother country, communication often took months, so progress was hard to instill. The goal of the Continental Army was to gain their independence from Great Britain, while the British had only the goal of maintaining their power over the colonists. Now that we're done with the causes of the war, I can get into some major events. Before the war really started, the Boston Massacre took place on March 5th, 1770. On February 22nd, a British customs officer shot a gun through the window of the home of an 11-year-old boy, which struck and killed the young boy. This enraged the Patriots, which led to a riot several days later, which resulted in 5 deaths and 6 injured by British fire. This event, along with Lexington and Concord, sparked the American Revolution. At the battles of Lexington and Concord, 49 colonists were killed, while 73 British soldiers were killed. This American victory instilled confidence in the rebellion and fear in the British king. From September 19th to October 7th, 1777, the Battle of Saratoga took place. This battle is known as the major turning point of the war, with an American victory which maintained the colonists' control of the Hudson River Valley. This convinced the French King Louis XVI that the Americans were a strong enough force to invent an alliance into. With this alliance, the colonists' victory was sure to come, and that it did at the Battle of Yorktown on October 18, 1781, where British General Lord Charles Cornwallis surrendered. The leader of the Continental Army, George Washington, had a major role in the Revolution. With his success at Yorktown, Washington grew to be known as a great leader and was elected the first president of the new republic. The colonists achieved their goal, and in turn, King George and his forces did not. Due to the war, the whole world now saw America as a strong nation and likely looked more down upon England. The start of this new democratic nation also inspired many nations to do the same, which we will see later on. Due to the Enlightenment ideas of anti-absolutarianism, the Americans decided to have a government with power split into 3 branches, with the people allowed to vote on representatives. Also due to the American victory, the British government had lost a big source of their raw materials and land mass. This is an example of a revolution that reflects Enlightenment values due to their ideas of republicanism. Moving on to the French Revolution that took place from 1789 till 1794. If we look at SPICY for the cause, in social, we have the fact that the upper class were very wasteful, which caused little or no resources for the starving lower class. In fact, the lower class were extremely poor and mistreated. A political cause was the disdain for the autocratic monarchy government. The king had all the power and neglected the needs of his people entirely. An innovative cause was the creation of the guillotine in late 1789 to swiftly and more gently execute people during the Reign of Terror. A cultural cause of the French Revolution was the desire to end the feudal system. An economic cause of the French Revolution was the immense debt that the French rulers were under. There was also a rapidly growing French population that the nation could not afford to feed. The revolution started when rioters stormed the Bastille fortress to gain firearms, ammunition, and gunpowder to start the rebellion. Around then, the Declarations of the Rights of Man and Citizen was written to give many rights to the French citizens, based on Enlightenment ideas of anti-slavery and equal rights to all citizens. From September of 1793 until July 1794, the revolutions were rapidly executing thousands of upper-class citizens by means of beheading. This event was known as the Reign of Terror and resulted in the beheading of French King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. A man known as Napoleon rose while serving in the French army in 1789, and even helped to bring a stable government to France. Because of the French Revolution, the monarchy was now replaced with democracy. This is another example of a revolution that reflects Enlightenment ideas due to the French belief that all men deserved equal rights. In 1791, leading to 1804, the Haitian population started to hear news of the French Revolution and the new rules of abolished slavery and equality for all citizens, and they started to realize, hold up, why don't we have that? Anyways, back to spicy. A social cause was the rebellion of the enslaved population against the racist hierarchical society. A political cause of the revolution was the French colonization that first sprouted Haiti as a nation, along with the desire to not have an absolutarian government. An innovation cause was the plantation system used to harvest and manage different cash crops by use of slave labor, that of which upset the enslaved civilization. A cultural cause of the Haitian Revolution was a dispute over heritage and a religious meeting based on a culture made by the enslaved society and people of color. Having their own culture and heavily inspired them to branch off into their own nation to allow it to grow. The plantations led to a very agriculturally based area that Haiti would be capable of thriving on. And due to their mother country of France being across the ocean, environmentally, it was not easy for the French to keep control over them. Moving on to the major events. In 1791, the slaves of the French colony first revolted, and then the French government responds with a governor with military forces just to subdue them. A man by the name of
Toussaint Louverture
rises up and exposes the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and its ideas of equal rights and freedoms for all of mankind.
Toussaint
Was the leader of the revolution and developed his goals and ideas from the French and American Revolution. In 1793, Great Britain joins the fight in attempts to control the colony. The Spanish, on the other hand, provided army with supplies and military support. Eventually, in 1794, France decides to free all the slaves. After many more years of fighting for their independence, it is earned on January 1st, 1804. With their independence, they also gained the consequence of having to pay France around 112 million francs, which is about $560 million in 2022. They had the Enlightenment idea of equality among all people, regardless of color or skin. Now, our final revolution is more of a group of revolutions that all took place simultaneously around 1808 to 1833. The Latin American revolutions. To look at causes, you guessed it, we're going back to spicy! Social causes. There was much discrimination from Spain against the people born away from their mother country, and believe it or not, but they didn't quite appreciate that. Political causes. A big political cause was the kidnapping of Spanish King Ferdinand VII by Napoleon, who invaded the peninsula, and many native South Americans feared Napoleon's inflictions on the Americas. Along with that, Spain was ran by an absolute monarchy, which went against the Enlightenment ideas of the Latin American citizens. Innovation will change things! Many blades and firearms were used in Latin American revolutions, such as the cutlass, Krag M1892-98, the bayonet, and M1860 light cavalry saber. What does all this mean? I could not tell you. Cultural causes! As said earlier, the Spanish were pretty mean to the not pure Latin American people, and often held them from certain leadership positions. Economics! Many Latin American colonies utilized mercantilism. This meant that they could only trade goods with Spain, which was not preferable to them, due to possible lower selling prices of other nations. Some colonies even illegally sold goods to British colonies. Environment! As I've stated before, being overseas from your colonies in the 18th and 19th century led to much difficulty in communication and control, which really is in no way ideal for either side. Some major events of the Latin American revolutions were as follows. In 1810, Colombia was the first Latin American nation to declare independence. Also in 1810, Mexico revolted the Grito de Dolores, and they officially became a nation on September 27, 1821. A little later, in 1825, the Treaty of Rio de Janeiro, recognizing Brazil's independence, was signed by Brazil and Portugal, giving the only Portuguese colony in Latin America their independence. The consequences of the Latin American revolutions were the creation of many republics, while the monarchies of Portuguese and Spain lost much land and linked to materials. A man by the name of Simón Bolívar hoped to one day unite each of the Latin American colonies into one country. Although he failed, he still majorly aided in establishing Panama, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia. This is yet another set of revolutions reflecting Enlightenment ideas such as equality to all men. They were discriminated against by Spain, and they felt that was unfair. This is all off. Let's point out some connections between all the revolutions. To start, most of them had been caused by issues like absolutarianism. France, Spain, Portugal, and Great Britain were all governed and controlled by the power of one person, and all the people under them that did end up rebelling believed that the power belonged to the people. The issue that Haiti, the 13 colonies, and Latin America had was the fact that their mother countries were across the Atlantic, and communication and control was thus made very difficult. Along with that, America and Latin America struggled with mercantilism, which limited their trading capabilities. All of these revolutions had the idea in mind that people deserved equal rights and freedoms. While there was much debate over who classified as a person and who was property, the idea of people and their rights were still constant amongst each of the revolutions. A consequence each and every one of these shares was the independence of these new republics and turning away from absolutarianism. Along with that, they all resulted in their mother countries losing either landmass or a type of labor or production. One major takeaway from these revolutions based on the influence of the American Revolution. Through the success in the ideals of the American Revolution, many colonies and nations followed in its footsteps to bring a better world without tyranny and attempt to make everyone's lives fair. I learned that the impact that events can have on history is not only on a national level, but rather it can affect the entire world and how we think. Make sure to comment down below what you learned or thought was interesting, and any questions you may have, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!